Hi, I'm Suze Shaner with Sage Leadership Strategies, and I'm your host today of Community Forum. And I have the great pleasure to have with me today Jeanne Demers, who is an EFT coach and a serial entrepreneur. Welcome, Jeanne.
Thanks for having me, Suze.
Oh, so great to have you on the show. I'm glad I finally got you here. So Jeanne's tuning in to us from New Hampshire, and I'm here with Comcast in Connecticut. So Jeanne, first of all, for those people that don't know what EFT is, can you please, I know it's emotional freedom technique, but can you explain to folks what that is and how it works?
Sure. So it's so simple that it almost defies a serious explanation, but it is a mind-body tool. So it falls in the category of energy work. And it brings the ancient science of Chinese medicine together with the modern science of psychotherapy. And it does two things really, really well. It allows you to access the subconscious, and it also clears, like physically clears, emotional blocks out of your system.
So interesting. You're basically saying integrating and merging Eastern and Western methodologies.
Yeah.
So I know that this has been somewhat controversial in this, let's say in the scientific community, in the holistic health, personal growth, energy work kind of field, pretty well widely accepted. Can you give us a clinical study that speaks to more the science and the efficacy and the validity of this methodology?
Sure. There's over like 100 studies that prove its efficacy. And in one of them, I think there were 83 participants, and they separated them into three groups. And one group it was it was a blind study, so they got no treatment. The second one got talk therapy, psychotherapy, and the third group got tapping. And at the beginning of the test, before they actually had their hour of whatever they had, they tested their cortisol levels. And cortisol, as you know, is the stress hormone.
Yep.
So when it's higher, it means that your stress level is higher. And then they tested the cortisol levels at the end of the hour. And they thought that their machines were broken because there was such a dramatic difference in the stress levels of the people who had received the tapping protocol at like 24%. It had gone down 24%. And it had gone down not at all in the other two groups. Which isn't to say that psychotherapy, but it doesn't mean that psychotherapy doesn't work. It just means that the results aren't as immediate. They aren't as immediately experienced in the body.
Well, that's a good distinction because, even Freud found that people could have insight, but it didn't always necessarily lead to action or other things. But with the EFT, you're saying this is a physiological thing that actually makes some shifts, physical shifts.
Exactly.
Okay, I want to delve into it a little bit more, but before we do that, I want to give the viewers a little flavor for your background because you came to this work in sort of an interesting way. And as I mentioned, you're what I call a serial entrepreneur. You've had all these different ventures. So what I want to do is just take a minute to talk about your overall background, then we'll come back to the EFT. But can you give us an overview of your entrepreneurial journey and how you got here? Because you have an interesting background, if I do say so.
Oh, thanks. Well, I consider myself primarily an artist. And I started off as an actress, and that led to writing, and the writing led to teaching, but in the spirit of wanting to get the arts back into the schools. So I created after-school programs, and I was very enamored of the hero's journey story structure. So that's what I was bringing to young people and exploring it with them. And that gave way to, because the whole online thing started to happen. And so I created an online community for girls, very specifically for girls, because it became important to me that girls share their great girl voices, their stories. And that led to, because I worked with one girl in particular, and her stuff, her voice was actually, she was a pioneer of the anti-bullying movement. And so she had a YouTube channel that blew up. And I mean that in like the best way, over 100, no, over 1 million video views.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it was really making an impact. And that led to a book deal. And she was clear that she wasn't the one to write the book. Could I write it with her? And so we did that. And that's kind of like the point at which tapping enters the story. But that
Well,
was, yeah.
so yeah, so I think you're a little humble here. Can I just say this? Because I think weren't you in? You did a lot of theater, like Broadway, off-Broadway theater, right? In New York, you were in New York, and
Yeah.
then you did do a lot of writing before you actually wrote this book with the girl. Now, can you do a series of like Ruby's books? Can you talk about that?
Right. So the online community for girls was called the Ruby Books.
Yeah.
And the reason that I called it the Ruby Books was that my journals throughout my 20s, 30s, 40s was called the Jeannie Books. That's how I referred to them. And then at a certain point, I got it that I freed myself up a lot in the writing process if I third personed myself. And so that was Ruby. So Ruby is really Jeannie, but Ruby.
Hmm.
And girls just loved doing that. They loved creating, it was a cartoon character. And so they loved creating themselves as a cartoon character and putting themselves through a hero's journey story.
So this was part of your after-school program curriculum with girls, really empowering like preteen and teen girls, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And that's the other talent I forgot that you're just slipping in there is that is that you're a gifted cartoonist and illustrator. Actually, I love your cartoons. But you taught yourself taught with that.
Yeah. And in fact, my sense of it is that at the beginning, when I was first doing it, is when I was best because it had the most childlike energy in the drawings. And then as I got more slick and smooth, I don't like it as much. But
Interesting.
yeah.
I mean, I still think your characters are quite whimsical and fun. Fun is a good word for it. Now, this young woman that you collaborated on the book with, because writing a book, I've known because I've tried several times. I haven't gotten mine published yet. Is not an easy thing. And I've interviewed a lot of authors on this show, and so you're saying one mechanism is distance yourself, third party it, and then you end up collaborating with this young woman. What's the title of that book and kind of where did that go? It was part of her voice in social media, but then it spawned from all the work you did with her, and then her voice got amplified, and then you helped her write the book, right?
Yes, and I would say that I would not be being falsely humble to say that her name is Emily Ann Regal, and it was reverse mentorship. She was mentoring me. She came on board as Ruby advisor #1, and so she taught me everything that she knew about social media. And that was kind of like our rapport. And I helped her by giving her the umbrella of my not-for-profit to do her thing. So We Stop Hate ended up becoming its own thing in a very big way. And out of it, the book, let me grab it, sorry, is called Flawed. How to stop hating on yourself, others, and the things that make you who you are.
Love it. And
Yeah.
is that still available if folks want? I mean, that seems like, and that was quite a while ago. Was that like 10 years ago or something?
No, that was 5 years ago. That was 2015.
Oh, 5 years ago. Why did I think it was longer ago than that? Okay. But
No.
very, very relevant and very, very timely then, very timely now, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know. It felt like it was more relevant then than it is now to me, but that just might be because my head was more in it then.
Well, there's especially, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Social Dilemma. Interesting, they cite some statistics in there in terms of what's happening with our teenagers and specifically
Oh,
teenage girls since 2011 to today's date in terms of self-image, the impact of social media, et cetera.
mm, mm.
So your book coming out in 2015 is right in the middle of all of that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And really, what's so great about the book is that it's really the teenage voices. I wrote it like I wrote it. I helped write it. I helped organize it. But it's loaded with these quotes that are the teenage voice in the world, giving each other tips and tricks. With the idea being that when you raise your self-esteem, you don't want to put other people down. So that was like the secret sauce.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So really so needed and what an impact you had with teenagers. And so you're saying that you started out as an artist, an actress, then you got into the writing, then you got into really helping empowering girls. It sounds like and the word you used was enamored by the Joseph Campbell's myth, the hero's
Hero's
journey.
journey.
I really resonate with that as well. It's a
Mm.
psychological and spiritual journey of the hero, right? Really evolved from a lot with the Greek myths, et cetera, in terms of all the work that the body of work that Joseph Campbell did. But so you got enamored with that work, brought it into the flawed work. Not that the work was flawed, the flawed book, just to clarify. um, and then you said that brought you to EFT. So how did that come about?
So what it was like I suffer with the self-esteem issues. I suffer and like all of the ways that that manifests itself. It's self-sabotage. It's just like being stuck, not being able to get beyond a certain point. And so I thought, God, I just wrote a book about this, and I'm still where I am. What is it going to take in order to really help people with these feelings of not being good enough? And I knew about tapping, and so I went in that direction. And then it just merged the way that life will do, where I realized that my self-worth and deservingness issues really showed themselves in my ability to earn well. And it wasn't for a lack of ability or talent. It was something else. And so I decided to apply tapping very specifically to my money issues. And with the idea that, like, all right, if this works for me in this way, it'll work for anybody. And lo and behold, it really dramatically shifted my reality.
You know what? So I'm curious with that. So you knew of tapping, and it sounds like you had heard of it. Maybe you dabbled in it a little bit,
Hmm.
and then through the process of the work you did in with the young women and getting the book published and all of that, because oftentimes we teach what we need to learn, right? So in that process, you realized that you're working with the girls on some of your very own issues, and you wanted to go deeper on that to really clear it to earn more money. Um, and yet you said the tapping. Did you go into it with the tapping? I'm just curious, like, prove to me this works. Does this tapping thing really work? And if I focus it on my money, is this really going to work? Like, did you go into it with that mindset? Like,
Yeah,
prove it.
yeah, really, really. Well, I was desperate. I was like, something's got to give here. And so I really gave myself to um, getting to what the heck is going on in my subconscious. And I mean, for me, when it came to dealing with money, physically, I was a wreck. I would break out into a sweat. I would, get a dry mouth. My heart would race. And so to tap and find that, wow, I can end up back in my right mind again, with something as simple as tapping on some points on my body. Yeah, this stuff works.
Am I overstating the case to say it's a bit of like a trauma response?
Totally, totally. You end up in fight or flight,
Or
and not
freeze?
because or freeze,
Yeah.
or fix. Fix is another new F.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Not to be confused with other apps.
Right.
Go on.
Um, yeah, and then you're not in your most resourceful state when you're in fight or flight by a long shot. And
Well,
so, what does it take?
neurologically, you can't be, because when that happens, your prefrontal cortex stop where your rational logical brain is functioning cuts off. So you really literally don't have access to that part of your brain.
Right, right. So yeah, so tapping is just incredible at taking you out of the amygdala and back into the prefrontal cortex quickly. That's the thing. It doesn't take long for the stress response to go noticeably down.
Okay. The other thing that I know is, well, okay, before we get into that, I want to ask you, so you said I'm going to work on EFT to kind of heal my own self-esteem, money earning kinds of issues, right?
Hmm.
Um, so how did that work? In what kind of time frame? What did you discover in your own work? Then I want to take it to the work you've done with others. But what did you discover in your own process?
I, I don't. What did I discover in my own process? I can earn really well now. That's not my. It's no longer my issue. I don't have. Um, I show up differently in the world, and it's like I don't have the same limitations that I had before, and they're internal limitations, and it's weird because it's like you don't. It's subconscious stuff, so you don't even fully realize what's at play. It's like that's 80 odd% of what's driving us is our subconscious. So you've got
Yeah.
to get in there and see that, this connects back to something
Yeah.
else.
So you're just noticing. So it sounds like, kind of in a way, one day you just noticed, hey, I'm different, and hey, I'm earning more. But at what point did you notice it? And was it a moment, or was it just a gradual awareness over time that, like, hey, that's shifted?
It shifted gradually over time. Like I continued to up my ability to earn. I didn't go from 0 to 60 overnight. It was more gradual than that, but it was possible for it to happen at all because I had a tool that could, as you say, bring me back into my body, bring me back into my right mind when I start to get fatutzed.
Uh, whatever term. Okay, so then you said, okay, I've kind of done enough here in terms of getting myself. Nobody's ever fully baked, but getting myself at a level that you felt comfortable with and felt like it sort of was proving to be a good methodology. So then, at
Hmm.
what point did you start working with others, and what's the nature of the work that you do with others in this capacity?
Right. So, interestingly, the way that I was able to throw myself fully into the work was I spent the last $4,000 that I had available to me on my credit card, to take a tapping into wealth coach training program. Not because I wanted to become a coach, but because I knew that I needed that level of commitment to really do the work and not run as soon as my stuff started to come up. And in the process of being in this coach training program, I was working with other people, taking them through these processes. And I was good at it. And I was good at it because I had such a feeling for it because it was my own pain. And so I soon became, not soon, I took the time that it took to become certified, but I ended up with a new career path as a a tapping into wealth coach.
So, and specifically using EFT, it's not just EFT for anything, specifically to help people with their money issues, which could be a myriad of things.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be
Yes.
necessarily always earning. What else could it be?
That people have things that are called financial traumas, where there was one gentleman that I worked with who made a very, very bad investment and it devastated him, and he didn't feel like he could get past it. And so the work that we did was to overcome the extreme guilt that he felt, and so he could move forward.
So it seems like the common theme here is that it's about clear processing and clearing emotions so that you have clarity of mind and consistency of action to achieve your goals. Is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm hearing you say. Is that accurate, or is there anything else?
That was really good.
I'm just listening to what you're saying. I'm like, okay, it sounds like boom, boom. I mean, is that, did I nail it, or is there
You nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So meaning it's the emotional component, but once you work through that, and part of working through that is like also the analysis and getting the clarity of thought, but then also the consistency of action, because I just know this from my own personal work, and then working with others in a coaching capacity as well, is that it seems like it's a bit of a layered process that they think, okay, good, I'm clear. And then they go to do something and then something else comes up. So it's not always one and done. Is that your experience?
No, absolutely. You do a certain amount of clearing, uncovering and clearing. It's a process of uncovering what's there in the subconscious and clearing it out of the system. And when I say I mean like limiting beliefs and things that are, we just take to be the truth of the way things are, because that's what we got programmed with in our earliest years. And it may not be serving us anymore. And so let's get that out of there, and then you're in a place to replace it with something else. But what's going to happen is that in the process of going to where you'd much rather be, resistance is par for the course.
Yeah.
You can just count on it. And resistance is cunning stuff. It's going to show up in like cleaning is my favorite form of resistance. It's
Come over here.
procrastination.
I'd love for you to come over here and resist a lot.
And resist.
Resist all you want at my house. I'm curious. One of the that's a healthy resistance.
Well, exactly. But yes,
resistances. Sorry.
Yes and no. It's like, is that really the best use of my time right now, when what I need to be doing also is marketing myself?
Yeah.
So
I hear you. I'm curious also, you said something about this was your own pain, and so when you're working with others, you know it, and it's always a tricky fine line. I'd love to hear how you navigate that space. It's a tricky fine line between working with people in a space that you have effectively, can I use the word, healed yourself, so you know that terrain, you know that journey, and yet their specificity and what they need may be slightly different than what it took for you to heal it. So how do you navigate that tricky space of like the wounded healer, so you're not inappropriately bringing your stuff into the session with the client? I'm just curious about that.
Right. Yeah. So how does it go? I mean, it's processes that I'm able to take people through, and so the work is one of activating somebody's stuff, triggering them, so that we're bringing the stuff up in their system, and we know what it is that's there to be worked with. And so the question is like, how do I keep my stuff out of the equation?
Yeah. How do you keep clear? Because it can get messy kind of quickly. And you're saying, well, I have processes. I want to make sure I stick to my processes. And yet, with people's stories and stuff coming up, I mean, because I'm assuming there may be times where you're affected or
their stories
could get activated by their stories, especially if you're talking about trauma in some way.
Yeah, but then the beauty of it is that you've got this incredible tool that you use in the moment to bring that right down. And it's very collaborative, this work. So it's not like, oh, I'm working my stuff as I'm working your stuff.
Hmm.
But no, it's a spirit of curiosity and interest, and you bring the meditative mind to it. You slow things down so that you can really notice what's going on. And sure, I'm gonna need to do that in a session as well, but in service to what they're bringing up. But I don't know, is like you need to like cut yourself completely off and out of the process when working this kind of material with somebody.
Yeah, you know what? There's so many places we could go, and I know we only have a few more minutes, but I want at some point, because I know you also have a meditative background, which I'm sure, as you just mentioned, bringing a meditative mind to it, because you
Mm.
lived and worked at IMS for a number of years, um, which I forget what it stands for, something meditations, Insight Meditation Center. Is that what it is?
Insight Meditation Society, yes.
Society, right. Okay. So I don't really want to go there right now because we only have a few more minutes. And for folks that don't know if EFT, can you just briefly explain what it is with the points and how it works?
Sure, sure. So it's points on the body that are actually meridian endpoints. And meridians, we're a bilateral system, so we have like two tubes of these energy highways running through our system, and carrying chi, vital life force energy. And it can get blocked in places along the way. So to tap on these particular points is a way of clearing. It brings the body back to the neutral emotional state, which is like the gold standard in health.
So
So
it's interesting because in a way it's really like not acupuncture, but acupressure, but very light tapping, not like really pressing in, but very light tapping. That's essentially what it's doing, right?
yep, yep, yep. It's often referred to as acupressure for the emotions.
And that's interesting because in our society, I like to think part of what we're going through is the great detox and getting more enlightened with all of this. But it's understanding the language of emotions and emotional
Mm,
literacy is not always people's forte. Either if because we live in spectrums, people may think that somebody is either too emotional or not emotional enough. It's like kind of you're saying, where do you get to that place where you have access to the emotions that can inform you, but not be overtaken by them or not
yeah.
or not feel them at all?
Right, right, right. Yeah. No, they're just loaded with information, and they're physical. I mean, you feel emotions in your body.
So I didn't mean to cut you off, but if folks were interested, might have to have you back on. If folks were interested in hearing more, how might they contact you?
So the website is realizewhatmatters.com.
Realizewhatmatters.com. All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Suze, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.